We're doing a sound check right now, and I promise I won't talk like Bucky Fuller. Bucky Fuller once at the Walker Art Center came to give one of his usual lectures, and he started speaking, and after 3 hours, people started to leave, and then he took a break, came back again, and talked another 2 hours. I think my wife and I, Joanne, were the only ones left, plus one of the guards from the galleries. But I promise I'm only going to talk about maybe 20 minutes or so, and it won't be really talking. It'll be demonstrating, whatever that means. And then we have 3 or 4 hours of questions and discussion and schmoozing and nibbling and all kinds of other formal familiarities. So how is the sound check coming?
Let's ask them.
Ask them.
Ask them how it sounds.
He wants to know if I'm too loud.
A little louder. Just a little bit louder, please.
Once upon a time. Is that loud enough?
That's good.
Okay, hear ye, welcome aboard. It's a very odd title called The Mythologies of Cosmology. And I'm not sure how to approach something like that because I'm on this little planet that is just one of many, I would say, objects running around this star, the sun. And here we are, humans, the Homo sapiens. Though actually I prefer the Homo ludens, that is the sentient creatures at play, because that's what we do. I hope we play healthily in this wonderful, incredible, fantastic planet. So Gaia wants to know why we're here. And I think we're here because of this rock. No, it's not a rock. It's actually a piece of clay. It's actually cuneiform. And while we had to leave Germany in a hurry, so when we got to Baghdad in 1937, we went to Babylon. And it's one of the most ancient civilized cultural forms. And this is what they recorded, their history, their mythology, and their reality. We had it translated at the Metropolitan, and it's nothing important. It's worthless, just daily stuff. But daily stuff is very important. This is what our world is about. So when my father picked it up while we were there, my mother picked up another one. By the way, in 1937, you could just pick up stuff because there was nobody there. You know, the gates to Babylon were open. So here's a smaller version of it. And it recorded a moment of every day, a few thousand years ago. And this device also records the moment. It's actually smaller than this. And right now I could be talking to somebody in India, in St. Paul, somebody at the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland. I could find out what somebody is thinking almost. How far have we come in about 5,000 years? It's one question that I can't answer. However, in 1947, I had an opportunity to go to France. We had come here in 1939 from Baghdad, and it was the International Jamboree de la Paix, the International Jamboree of Peace. And there were 20,000 Boy Scouts all gathered to say, from now on there will be peace. And they advised us that when we go to Moisson, that we should take along something to trade. And so I did take something. I took a Superman comic book with me, a Batman, and a Captain Marvel. And as we do in the big encampment, we meet scouts and try to talk to each other. And so I met an Egyptian scout, and I traded a Superman comic book. This is 46. I traded a 1941. Not the 39 action comic, but the 1940. So right now, he's got a very valuable object. But I have a little Sumerian head. And this is fashioned in clay. This is fashioned in clay. Yesterday, my iPhone went kaput. I had to go to the iPhone people and say, what's happening? And they had to consult the manual, and they repaired it within, a few thousand hours. This has been around a long time. So it's a Sumerian head. Is it a demigod? Is it a child's toy? Is it a ceremonial object? I don't know, and it doesn't matter. All I know is that the anthropomorphism that has been our stream, our ocean in which we have swum in for millions of years, has permeated our mythology. And if you go back to ancient times, to all cultures, you find that our dreams, our hopes, are all manifested in some way through the objects that we make, because the human is an object maker. We make things. We make things, and then we discard them. I didn't discard this. I kept it on my desk when I was doing administrative work at the college, and when somebody came in with a real source, a real problem, I would look at my friend and I'd say, you've been through this before 1,000,000 times. And it gave me some good breathable moments. While we were in Baghdad, we'd go to Babylon, which is just down the street, like from here to Robbinsdale, and picked up what my wife sort of jokingly said, you're a pack rat. And she called it the shards of Babylon, which they are. They're stuff we picked up as we went back again to the 1937 Chrysler, which a friend of ours had. These are the discards. These are the shards. Shards play a very important role in mythology. They are the pieces, they are the remnants. So this is not sculpture. At one time it was a vessel. And many of you collect all kinds of things. In fact, I see some people here that are major collectors of what I would call the mythological and the cultural survivors of our evolving history. But I played with these, just like I played with my friend here, to remind me of the progress of time. And that, of course, is Chronos. And Chronos is the logical time of, like right now, let me see. What is it? Oh, yes, I keep this to be sure I don't overtalk. Chronos gives us essentially a foundation. It roots us into our daily life. But there's also sidereal time, which is cosmic time. It has a completely different way of looking at the evolving and transforming, what I would say, energy of the universe. The mythological time is Kairos time. And the Greeks, with their Chronos and Kairos, actually made a difference in the way that their rites, in the way that their interactions took place. This hung in our house. We lived in Mannheim, and in the 20s, my father, a doctor, found out that the museum in Mannheim was deaccessioning a few things. So fortunately, he got this. And this is a little painting, a humble painting, nothing big, nothing major, though I did find on the internet that it actually is real, it exists. Oh, wait a minute, it is real, it does exist. And it is a man, he looks like he's a priest, or a monk, or some sort of cleric. And he has a little magnifying glass. And this magnifying glass is tuned to a tiny little purple flower. And there sits a purple flower in a vase, just like you see here and there. By now it's probably dried. And it's called the Naturfreund, which translates the friend of nature, which would be the literal, or the naturalist. So in 1834, someone painted a naturalist. Now, I don't know how much this has inspired me over all these years, because from Mannheim it went to Baghdad, it went to New York, it went to New Orleans, it went to Minneapolis. It always hangs in my studio. And it gives a kind of connection between we, in loving way or in other ways, try to understand the world around us. It's pre-science. This is Dr. Roman Vishniak, a microbiologist and also a photographer. And I saw a movie about him, and he had been reaching into a pond with a test tube. And the narrator in the documentary said, Dr. Vishniak will get his specimens to photomicrograph, and then he will return them back again, and that he works with living entities. So I did a photo essay, which is in that bag here, but here are a couple of photographs to show when this person was doing what they were doing, and this person was doing what they were doing. Time stops, and yet it evolved. And what has happened between 1834 and 1991? So later on, if you want, as you can look through all this stuff, there's a whole portfolio of things. But I found it mysterious and yet very, very ordinary that somebody sits there with this contraption, this microscope, which is a new invention. Socrates didn't have a microscope. All he had was a lectern. Actually, he didn't have a lectern. He had the steps of the Parthenon, which is just as good. So what we have is a history of inquiry to find, see, I'm going to do it this way, to find what is going on in the world around us. I can't bring you the heavens, but I can bring you a schematic of the heavens. And the schematic has constellations. And the constellations are Homo ludens, who plays with trying to understand what is the cosmos, what is the reality. And again, it's anthropomorphic. There are hunters, Greek mythological, Roman. Also, as we go today, there even, today if a scientist is able to discover something healthy, they may name a comet or a planet after her or him. I'm touching it. As I'm touching this, I find that as I read books, as I see films, there is something here and then there's me. I'm a hugger. I want to shake your hand. I want to bite don't take me to a restaurant because I will embarrass you. I pick stuff up and I munch on it. You've got napkins. I like the idea of the primary experience, because our culture, as Jean Baudrillard would say, is a culture of secondary and tertiary experience. Primary experience, which is what our friend here, the Naturfreund, was doing when he was looking at that with his own eyes. This is not a telescope. So my thought of this afternoon is to ask you about your own experiences with regard to the primary experience of feeling and the secondary experience, which we could only do now with such profusion. This is a little compass. And it tells me that I am wherever I am. It's gravity and it's magnetism, two forces. Can you feel gravity? Well, yes, if you happen to fall. How can we look at our structure, planet, our friends, the solar system, our little company, the galaxy, galactic group? How far do we go? When I first started my project, the Genesis project in 1956, there was probably only the Big Bang theory. Then came the steady state theory. Then came the bubble in the steady state theory. Then came the inflation theory. Then came string theory, and then M theory. And these beautiful theories in science are matched by the extraordinary world of mythological creation. And I have here what you may want to look at later on, all the different, I would say, thinkers and perhaps even imaginers who document very carefully how we answer our questions of the why, the life cycle, and we are still doing it. Joseph Campbell talked about the heroic encounter of how the hero leaves the tribe and goes into the world and experiences, returns after life-changing experiences, and has difficulty conducting any more interviews with the tribe because they don't speak his language, and he doesn't either. And so there's at least 7 books that he and many other mythologists have written about what it is to, he would claim, that as we go on our journey, we encounter 7 monsters, and then we wrestle with them. His conjecture is that they are our own monsters that we make and overcome. I was intrigued by one quote, and that's the only thing I'll read to you. Campbell says, he's one of the many mythologists, "Behind all these manifestations is the one radiance which shines through all things. The function of art is to reveal this radiance through the created object." Now he speaks object, but this doesn't necessarily mean object as we have known it before. So the journey of the hero, here is the mini-singers. These are troubadours that went, this is a book, in German of course, from the 20s, who went through village to after village and who sang the mythology of the time. We didn't have the internet. All we had was the passing down of wisdom from one generation to another. Now, with this little device, I can find out anything that goes on anywhere. This blizzard of information, then, and this blizzard of data, allows each one of us to make our own decisions, which is fantastic. When I look at the sun, well, no, I actually cannot look at the sun. I have to use another object, my sunglasses, because it's a very life-giving planet, not a planet, it's a star. When that star shines down on us, as my meteorologist friend would say, it's pretty strong. I want to be sure my eyes still are there tomorrow. Think about that. So much of it is dichotomy. There is this, there is a yin, there is a yang, there is darkness, there is light. Half of mythology wrestles with this problem of what it is, life and death, dark and light. Many of these books, and later on you can come up and take a look at them, reveal to you how each of us, from our primary experiences, have tried to sort out this cacophony, if it's sound, this total blizzard of images. It goes into all fields. An old seashell. An incredibly beautiful carved, or if you will, nature-made a painting. I look at these shells and I'm absolutely mesmerized. If your primary experiences in anything can encourage your sense of wonder, then that is what is necessary to give the most important quality that we can give each other, which is hope. You know, thousands of years of this, millions of years of that, and we're part of that stream, that life stream, life energy. One of our artists here made this little pot. It's just a wraparound pot. I was intrigued. He certainly didn't think about a seashell. I don't know how old this is, but we, the toolmaker, we, the artist, we, the liver, we do what I would call arting. Now, my father was a doctor, my grandfather was a doctor, and I was supposed to be a doctor or a lawyer, but instead, I decided to practice arting. Now, doctors practice medicine. I practice arting. Bucky Fuller was saying, I seem to be a verb. All of us are verbs. Some of us are nouns. the noun is static, the verb is dynamic. Mondrian created the dynamic equilibrium, which is the balance of the forces. In just about every mythological and now cosmological matter, antimatter, attempts to bring balance to, I would say, the experience of the life force. This bunch of stuff is on top of a painting. This painting is one of those that are up there in the second row, in which we took 2 or 3 of them and then did various kinds of photographic magic, and then a contraption that 3M had created with actual acrylic paint, these giant scanner And so for a while I messed around with this. Now the painting way over on the left is actually a small section of one of these 10 by 50 foot scanner murals, which I cut out a little section, threw the big stuff away, and then did a painting. This is one of the great big scanner murals that is an exact copy of my painting. I stopped that because I find that the analog world, the world that I can touch and feel pain and feel joy and have epiphanies, or the other, is what really gives what I would say joy. With this, I have one more thought. Ta-da! How does this work? Oh, yes. Stethoscope. My grandfather's stethoscope. Thermometer. 19th century thermometer. How have our instruments of information changed from the days of cave painting until now, when we're cruising outside the solar system, when we're already beginning to talk about terraforming Mars? You know, the stethoscope that my grandfather used, he could hear the pulse. Nowadays, getting back to the mythological, if you see somebody walking down the hall and they're wearing this, you know that she is a healer who can hear much, much better than Granddad did with this contraption. We can now hear not only the song of the whales, but we can hear the dark matter whispering to us, trying to understand it. Any questions? I'm going to paraphrase the question so that in case those who can't hear. So you're saying?
Why?
W-H-Y.
Yes, correct.
In German, warum. Now you speak different languages. I don't like answers, but I like questions. Answers stop me dead. Okay, thank you very much. But to question means that the child's curiosity, when the child eats its first peach, he has that wonderful sense of total, naive and innocent enthusiasm. Somewhere along the line, that enthusiasm either gets blocked, I don't know if it's nature or nurture, or it's enhanced, usually by another person or a group of people, or participating in primary experiences with the world around them. Each culture has its own why. We're now, for the first time, able to contact anyone on the planet, see anything we want. How are we grounded? What is a way for us to make some sense for ourselves? And so in the visual arts, in the musical arts, auditory, visual, kinesthetic, in any of the ways in which we use different languages, that's how we ask ourselves. We're always asking why in our different languages. Any other thoughts? Yo.
Ari, I remember you once talking to me a little bit about the balance of color and shade and having achieved that in one painting. And I don't know if it's the painting up there immediately to the right of the center or still down in your studio.
No, it is that one.
Okay, And as I look at that now, all of a sudden I'm thinking about your last line just now about dark matter. And you were talking about that in that painting you felt like you had even got the background blackness, the not color balanced. And I'm wondering, where is dark matter, or do you see dark matter in your cosmogenesis paintings as you look back on it?
It used to be called the ether. And it had lots and lots of thoughts were written about the ether. And the background radiation was actually discovered by accident by some Bell people who were trying to figure out why there was that weird sound, which wasn't sound, but frequencies. Now we give names, we have to. One of the ways in which we understand our world is to name things. And yet, as you look through history, and you see the reappearance of a phenomenon with a different name and with a completely different interpretation based upon either the mythological or the scientific. The scientific not only asks how and why, but has to be verified. If I just pontificate, that's very nice, that might be entertaining, but can I share that? This painting that my friend was talking about, I have, and I'm going to combine colors with Freddie. Freddie Muno is my friend, the painter, who is here somewhere. I don't know where, somewhere. Oh, there. When Freddie and I were talking about painting, and I said, "Oh, Freddie, is this finished, this big painting?" He looked at me sternly, as only Professor Munoz can, and he said, "It's complete, not finished." And ever since then, Freddie, I've been telling everybody that the idea of completion as compared to finished is, again, a breathing outward feeling experience. So this particular painting, I was trying to balance, which I've been trying to do all the time. And to do that, you do it either by accident or you do it by karma. If the Tao can allow you to make something happen that works, hooray. I've learned more about art by making mistakes because there are no such things as mistakes. There are only things that at this moment aren't working quite right, and I will take another task. So discomfort and sadness can be addressed to go to wellness by looking at what is it that can balance. So this particular one, among many of the others, I tried to see, but not if I try too hard, not if I will it. I can't will it. You don't surrender when you do the work. Instead, here is probably the one word that I think I might try to remember of anything of this talk, and that is empathy. What is empathy? Wow. Not only is it being able to be with you as we are involved, but with the tree, with the dog, with the mountain, with a star. Empathy is that transformation. It is the ability to use your senses, all of them at the same time, so that when something happens in Kairos time, and finally this work was complete, not finished, it was because of the balance. I tried this and that, this and that. I don't know how I did it. In fact, I really don't know how many of these works evolved. All I know is that in 1956, I said, from now on, I'm going to do only one thing for the rest of my life, and that is I want to celebrate life. And so that's what these are. They're not for entertainment. They are for one human trying to understand the why that you were saying, Patrick, and to ask how come the same thing over and over through our history of millions, billions of years transforms. So in arting, in practicing art, my journey is just to doodle. My wife and I were in Florence, and a filmmaker came by to do a documentary about Florence, and somebody told me there's a couple of kooks up there by the monastery, Richard Sarin and I. He paints like Rembrandt, and I paint like I don't know what. And he comes looking at Richard's paintings, and he just fumes and walks out in disgust. He said, painting like this is blasphemy in Florence. Because I really devastated Richard. He went into my little studio, he looked at what I was doing, and he says, "Ach, mein Gott, da ist ein amerikanischer Doodler." He was an American doodler. And so that's what I do. I doodle. Any other questions? You.
Okay. I have a naive technical question that you've probably answered a million times, but I've never heard the answer. What did you use when you paint? I mean, how did you, was it a brush, a single brush, of ink? You know,
Which one? Which one?
Any of them. What made all these little stringy things?
That's a very, very important question, because if I hear Janos Starker play the Kodai unaccompanied sonata, from Kodai to Starker, and there's this box of wood and strings, and he saws away with this horsehair. It's utterly incredible. Glenn Gould picks up the fugal form. He doesn't have to make the piano. He has to know how to play it. And my friend here has been a piano tuner for eons and eons. And you know what it's like when you're listening to the vibration. You're right within the living energy and you work with it. So when you are a musician, a dancer, a poet, a maker of pots, painter, stuff that you happen to have. Again, Freddie stopped using a brush. He uses anything that's around in order to get it. It's amazing how industrious we are to find the proper tools, either through language or through contraptions, like this thing that I'm talking with. And technique matters in terms of being able to master it. And mastering means not to conquer it, not to power it. Master means that you're so comfortable with it that the empathy that I spoke about earlier is between you and what it is you're doing. Watch an athlete as they take this little object and it goes into something, whatever the sport is. My sport was fencing. I was a saber fencer. And if I tried to think of what I was doing, I got it. But if you are with it, if you're in the force, if you're in whatever term you want to use, in the zone, who knows what. And it's not surrender, it is the idea of being so at one with what you're doing that the technique will follow. So I use anything that's available. And if I'm lucky, I've got canvas or I've got boards. And there are a lot of different techniques, and later on you can ask me how this one was done and that one was done. But it's just one of the 5 qualities that are involved in the visual world of art. There's a subject matter, and then there's a content. The subject matter opens the door. Hello, come on in. The content is once you get inside the castle, and you see all the rooms, it's the layers and layers and layers. I mentioned the mythology of cosmology, but there's a hidden third one, and that is the metaphor. When I mentioned that empathy is one of the incredible, powerful products of the universe for us, what is the metaphor? The metaphor is the ability of something to give you many layers of meaning. At first, it is subject matter. And then as you enter into this world, whatever the world is, then it triggers within your body, because your mind and your body are really one. And the metaphor presents, my friend David Brown used to say, he wants to unpack, those of you who are students that we know, to unpack the meaning of something. And the metaphoric transformation of the familiar into the mysterious is one of the qualities of art. And for me, art, it's not the quantity, it's the quality. And how do we measure quality? That's a why that I can't answer. But some people apparently know. I see another hand.
Yes, here's a fun question for you. Obviously, time is all over your paintings. your wonderful work. Time is everywhere, and I see time in anyone that I look at. So here's a fun question. If you could transport yourself into the future, what time period? Well, if you could only pick one, what time, how far would you go deep into the future and the past, if you could only pick one of each?
And you're talking about the future, not the past.
Well, both. Like me, I may want to go 150 years, 150 to 200, not too far. But for yourself, could you deal with time? If you can go forward and back, what time period? How many years?
Now you see, you have just touched upon the double meaning of the question of time.
Yeah.
Now, when our friend Einstein discussed the thought of relativity, and then later on came quantum mechanics, you have people today trying to find if there's any way in which this balance can be achieved. And if matter can be converted to energy, energy to matter, and if time itself, now we only think it's a forward motion. We think of time and we label time and we use 100 years, 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years. And then when somebody says time stood still, I'm more interested in time standing still. I'm interested right now, this very minute. There are 50 different, and if, let's say the median age is 50 years. So let's multiply 50 by 50. Think of all the seconds that have passed by since any of us were born. Where did they go? Where will they go? I don't pick a time in the past or in the future because it would deprive me of the most wonderful, incredible mystery of all, which is now. And being in the now is the time that I find is, for me, the one that wants to make me do things. But I honor your question because it's very timely.
Excellent.
It's very timely.
It's all about now.
Any other thoughts?
Everybody?
Jawohl.
I hope you can hear my voice sufficiently. He and I have been friends for a long time, both camarades in painting. I would like you to imagine him at the French pastry 46, voraciously eating a fresh croissant.
Now, as usual, Freddie Munoz is able within one sentence to pierce all sorts of what I would call known quantities and go into the subtext and into the essence. I don't have it here, but the spiral, oh yeah, in many of these books, you see the spiral nebula, which is a Fibonacci series. And it so happens that Monsieur Croissant actually came out of the horn of cornucopia, and as she emerged, she decided on a half-baked idea, which was to create the spiral nebula so that you could taste it and enjoy it. And we waited millions of years for the spiral nebula to come to us so that we can taste it with passion. Any other thoughts?
Is it fair to bake the nebulas?
I couldn't hear.
Is it fair to bake the nebula?
Well, you know, the spiral nebulae are being baked continuously, but they're being flavored by the arts. I mean, at night, if you look up at the sky and you see either a rainbow or you see stars, you're the one who gives it the flavor. You're the one who calls it a constellation. You're the one who calls it Ka in Egypt, or calls it Ra, or whatever it is. So we make our own interpretation. And what I like about the idea of being able to work with the microcosm and the macrocosm is that they're actually the very same thing. And that prevents me from being stuck in one kind of interpretation. I can move freely back and forth. If I do get stuck, then I'll sing or play my harmonica. Any other observations? Yo.
So I like to think of myself as like an active self and also a sub-self that's connected to the universe. Would you say that that is like one and the same or two separate things?
I'm going to repeat the question, but could you once more try to formulate it?
So I think of myself as an active self.
As an active what?
Part of myself is an active self.
Yes.
And part of myself is connected to the universe. Right?
Yes.
So would you say that that is the same self or is like two separate things?
Oh, beautiful, beautiful, wow. You just put your toe right into the hot water of duality. We've been fighting duality now from the very beginning. You know, wait a minute, is that one woolly mammoth or two? Since I don't have any answers for anything and only have questions, your question of I'm the active self, but then I'm the passive self, is that the same me? Aren't we constantly evolving? I remember Bucky Fuller came to Syracuse back in '51, and he was brought in by the philosophy department, not by the architecture department. And the introducer said, now we're here, our eminent, and he started naming all the things Bucky does. And we thank you and welcome you back. And Bucky Fuller comes up like this and he says, I hadn't been here before. What? I introduced you 4 years ago. No, that wasn't me. Well, wait a minute, said Bucky. That wasn't me. I wore different clothes, didn't I? Yes, okay. No, my hair got grayer. And this is now Bucky doing all this. And wow, how many times have I eaten since then? My body reorganizes itself every 7 years. Well, mostly. Oh, he said, yes, my glasses. I have the same glasses I wore here 4 years ago. So oh, wait a minute. The gold in here, the metal, is also changing. By the time he finished his 3-minute reply, Bucky Fuller had disappeared and reappeared. So we are constantly metamorphizing. We're constantly changing. We really aren't the same. Look at the pictures of yourself when you were a baby. Think of yourself now in 50 years. Here goes our question of what do you see yourself 100 years from now? So how we are able to evolve. Before Darwin, things are pretty well set. But now there is evolution in everything, not only in animals, in ourselves, evolution in the universe. In the last 28 minutes, every one of us has evolved. Any other thoughts? Yo.
Can you go twice? When we were hanging in the top row, I was blessed with being part of that small group of people. We were concerned about the light. The lighting hadn't been set right. And you came up and said the most remarkable thing, which is that this retrospective exhibit, in many ways, is more about the macro than the micro. In other words, what I walked out of that day, and I told you I didn't sleep that night, I just kept turning this idea over, is that this work emerged as a macro of all those retrospective pieces. And that it was a living, breathing work. And as you were installing it, it was the sense that you were creating this. You had the storyboard laid out and whatever. But I'm just wondering now that it's several weeks on, and Mark, the same thing that goes with Mark. I mean, this whole space is one work for me right now. You know, and I see that in all the cosmogenesis, as an emerging cosmos of whatever. But I'm just wondering now, looking back, okay, the walls are covered. Any more thoughts about the relationship between the macro and the micro in this room right now?
Well, you know, when I was working on these 1970, 71, by the way, about 2 years while I was working, I spent that time with Vishniak working with his little creatures. I did, I don't know how many, 12 here, maybe altogether 15, because Patrick, I think you have one, and I think you have 2 other ones that you've mounted. It's a completely different body that is doing with a tiny crow quill, just sits there and doodles. And then when I'm doing this, like some of these works are 10, 20 years in making, and this one was in 20 seconds. Now, what? I had it all set up, and then I got into the right mode. There it is. There's a little one up there like that. The chi, the energy, can take long time or short time. My dreams about what's up there and what's inside means I can go into these. So when I look around, I think I told you this is just really one big painting. I don't know how I did it, really. And I don't know how the macro overflows the micro. To me, it's just, all this is just one big painting. Now, how people look at their work. I remember Freddie, when he had his big show at the museum, and he was surrounded by his work. I know that Mark, have not talked to him yet about how he feels about the 2 different portfolios and all the other work that I saw you do. You have evolved over the years, Mark, in such a way that each one is in itself a Mark Roberts. But there are different areas that you have explored. And how you feel after you see them here, how the musician feels after she has just finished an incredible concerto. Actually, I can't answer that one, but I appreciate the fact that it brings me into the opportunity to say, everything here is one work. The earlier work from the 50s is a bit more, I didn't have the courage, shall I say, to say Genesis, the idea of origins, the idea of beginnings. Not biblical beginnings, but the tabula rasa in Latin, that is the clean slate. Every moment is an opportunity. So early ones have different poetic titles, but then when Genesis starts, it means that I can concentrate on what I'm doing without trying to figure out, without me interpreting what I'm doing. So let it be said simply that this is work that has been completed and is now here for a moment, and then the most important thing for me is to go back to the studio and work some more. Well, thank you. I think it's time for nourishment, and come up here and look at all the stuff and, throw it around and do anything you want, ask any questions, and thank you so much.